What if sometimes in life, when it comes to God's doing a work, that we miss the entire lesson completely? Welcome back to our pathway. We've been looking at the stories of 6 different characters. In the last couple of weeks, we took a little bit of a break because of Easter time. But here we are jumping back into their stories again. And we're looking at the story of Mary of Bethany. Now, I want you to think about Mary of Bethany because where she lives is the town of Bethany. You say, why is that even significant? Well, if you were to take your Bible, many of you have a chart in the very, very back or some maps. And those maps will show you Bethany. And Bethany is right next door to the city of Jerusalem. You say, why is that even important? Because this coming weekend, we're going to be looking at the story of Mary of Bethany because it's going to involve her brother Lazarus. And when it comes to Lazarus, Jesus is going to not heal him, but Jesus is going to raise him from the dead. Now, thinking about that, Mary of Bethany, she was there. She wanted Jesus to heal her brother before he died, but Jesus actually delayed for a couple of days, and then he came into town, and Mary was pretty much upset about it. But when it came to the story, I want you to think about where that was. Bethany is literally located just over the hilltop from Jerusalem itself. And we think about the Mount of Olives. The Mount of Olives is right next to where Bethany is as well. It's just a very, very short walk. You can walk from Bethany to Jerusalem in about 30 to 45 minutes, going over the hilltop through the valley and then back up into the city of Jerusalem again. But we think about that time. Think about Jesus and what's going to happen just a little bit later. We remember how Lazarus died, and then as you look in John chapter number 11, that Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. That's an even bigger miracle. We understand that Mary of Bethany wanted Jesus to heal her brother Lazarus, but Jesus didn't. He delayed for a reason, because Jesus was going to raise Lazarus from the dead. But I want you to think about this too, because Lazarus was raised from the dead. He was buried in Bethany, and we think about where he was. It was just outside of Jerusalem where Jesus was going to die. And we look at the lesson, what was Mary supposed to learn? What are we supposed to learn? Mary wanted something specific to happen. She was praying for a miracle to happen. But is it not possible, and we know that it is, that oftentimes we're praying for something specific? We may even see Jesus do a miracle in our lives, but we get so focused on the miracle that we forget the bigger context and the bigger lesson. The raising of Lazarus from the dead was supposed to be a picture and a reminder of what Jesus said he was going to do all along, which was what? He was going to die on the cross, and he was going to rise again from the dead as well. In fact, Lazarus' resurrection is ultimately what is going to cause, in many ways, the persecution in the last few steps of Jesus' life in the city of Jerusalem, where he was going to be crucified, he was going to die, he was going to then 3 days later rise again from the dead, as we celebrated not too long ago on Easter or Resurrection Sunday. And so we think about life. Think about the context of what's going on, because it's so easy to get focused on what we want and what we want to do that we may miss the much larger picture and the much larger context of what God is trying to do. And that's why we're trying to walk along this pathway, understanding that God has sent us. God was calling Mary of Bethany to something greater. God was using the story in the resurrection of Lazarus, first his illness and then his death, for an even greater option and opportunity to be able to minister to other people. But it was so easy at first for them to miss that lesson. So what's the lesson for us? As God's doing something in our lives, yes, we're going to be praying that God will do miracles, that God's going to do a lot of things in our lives specific to answer our prayers, but it's not about us. So many times we're praying for what we want. Mary had some specific things that she was praying for, but she almost missed the opportunity in the miracle. So let's not miss those opportunities. God's doing many amazing and wonderful things. Let's be looking for how God's working through our story to be able to send us to share the gospel with others.